Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'd just like to thank the regular members of Macular's Finest for coming out and watching this video. Your support means a great deal to us, and we ask that you subscribe down below so that we can break 1,000 views and no longer be slaves to YouTube. We'd also like to remind you just how difficult it is to find a f***ing fedora during the middle of a pandemic.
Get away from me!
Hello everyone, it's me Drew, and welcome to Social Distance Cinema Discussion. This week we watched The Blues Brothers, recommended to us by Trevor Citrullo. It's come to my attention that The Blues Brothers is a lesser-known cult classic. At least for me, this was only the second time I had ever seen it. Is that bad? I think it falls by the wayside a little bit, just because the early 80s were filled with great comedy films. I'm talking Caddyshack.
Hey, somebody step on a duck.
Ghostbusters. Airplane.
You can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Having not been born in the 80s, it's very difficult to remember your dad's favorite film. Which film is the funniest is up to personal preference. But it's not really fair to compare The Blues Brothers to all those other classic films. For one, it's 2.5 hours long, which is an hour longer than pretty much any of those other titles, and an hour longer than any comedy film has the right to be. To tell you why the movie's so long, we have to get into the band's backstory. And yes, the Blues Brothers were a real band. The idea for the Blues Brothers came in a Dan Aykroyd-owned speakeasy in Toronto, called the 507 Club. John Belushi was a regular there. Aykroyd introduced Belushi to the blues, and from there they kinda just fell in love with the genre. They wanted some separation between the band personas and their real lives, so they decided to invent two characters and give them backstories, and that's where Jake and Elwood Blues came from. This built up intrigue around the band, but it also allowed them to pitch the idea to SNL. Aykroyd wanted to leverage their Saturday Night Live fame to gain a larger following, and the band itself consisted of a number of SNL musicians. When it was clear that they had a large enough fan base, Aykroyd decided it was time to fully flesh out their backstory, and the idea was pitched to Universal, and he churned out a 300-some-page script. To put that into perspective, in screenwriting, a page generally equals a minute of screen time. At 300 pages, The Blues Brothers was set to be over 4 hours long. The director, John Landis, took on the project and shortened it down by about half, which still led to a 2.5-hour movie. Fans of Belushi and Aykroyd knew them for their comedic wit, but were kind of surprised when they walked into theaters and saw this. It's important to take into account when this movie was made, 1980, and a sign of the times is the notorious cocaine budget. The cast and crew would often be motivated or rewarded with cocaine for finishing a scene or working long nights. Aykroyd swears that dozens of other movies operated in this fashion during the time, which is just wild to think about. Let me know in the comments if I should just start bringing cocaine on set. The Blues Brothers cocaine budget has become infamous because of John Belushi's overdose and subsequent passing just 2 years after the film was made. Director John Landis would often have trouble with Belushi on set, and he would just disappear for hours at a time. Landis also came out and said that he once walked into Belushi's trailer and saw a mountain of cocaine on his table. A mountain of cocaine on John Belushi's table. Like Scarface. There's a scene or two where Belushi sounds nasally, which leaves me curious as to whether he snorted coke before the shot.
Now, who here at this table can honestly say that they played any finer or felt any better than they did when they were with the Blues Brothers?
Either way, it tends to be glamorized as an endearing feature of the film, but in reality, I just see it as a cautionary tale about enabling an addict.
For me and the Lord, we got an understanding.
We're on a mission from
The
God.
movie is just a musical that masquerades as a comedy. People come for the comedy, and they stay for the fantastic musical performances. Some of the greatest black musicians of all time are in this film. Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, and James Brown. We'll talk about the cultural significance of that in a little bit, but their performances are something that's also pretty notable. In films, and especially musicals, directors often use lip syncing. It's almost completely unheard of for there to be a live performance in a fictional full-length feature. The audio during the church scene featuring James Brown was captured the day of recording. Though a little unorthodox, it greatly aided in the feel of blues music. Blues is not meant to be sang the same way twice. Minor differences in voice vibrato or tone are key to what makes blues blues. Later on, you can clearly tell the issue with lip-syncing blues music during the Aretha Franklin song, Think. Her lips don't always match what she's saying, and the editors also use a ton of quick cuts in order to make it seem like it's working. While that would be a problem in any other film, it gives this film character. The quick cuts and severed audio serve to give you a feel of the blues without even knowing it. Also, this doesn't have much to do with the whole lip-syncing thing, but barring one scene, all of the dancers are non-professionals. Aykroyd and Belushi weren't professional dancers, so the choreographer decided that it would look weird if they threw them next to professional dancers. The studio execs were looking at the dailies and decided that they didn't like it, so they told Landis that he had to hire professional dancers, which is why the church scene seems so extravagant. The blues was created by African American slaves during the 19th century and has evolved until today, where there are many different forms of blues in many different areas with many differing elements. The year is 2020, and I began to wonder if the Blues Brothers was a form of cultural appropriation. It's not a terrible question to ask, considering white people have been historically terrible in the social justice department. Cultural appropriation is when elements of a specific disadvantaged culture are taken by another dominant culture. To most, it's seen as exploitative, especially when the elements are profitized, bastardized, or mocked. The inverse would be cultural appreciation, a manner of conduct that credits, celebrates, and uplifts the disadvantaged culture. The Blues Brothers was made thoughtfully, in complete opposition of cultural appropriation. For one, the filmmakers were cognizant of their intentions. The whole band was formed under the pretense that Aykroyd and Belushi loved the genre. The comedy in the film never comes at the expense of the blues or African American people. In fact, the black people in the film are probably the coolest characters. Second, they didn't hop on a trend. In 1980, blues was on the decline. According to John Landis, when he called James Brown about being in the film, he instantly agreed, because the man just didn't have work. Aykroyd even credits the whole band's success to a lull in musical interest during the 80s, in which everyone was trying to find the new musical fad. Thirdly, it respects black history and gives them a piece of the pie. The film incorporates and brings to light the best black blues musicians of all time, allowing them access to a new audience and more revenue. By this association, the filmmakers are given permission to depict this aspect of black culture. And lastly, it attacks white supremacy. There's nothing quite as symbolic of cultural appropriation as the Nazi use of the swastika.
A swastika is calling you, the sacred and ancient symbol of your race since the beginning of time.
The symbol was stripped from several Indian religions in which it represented spirituality and divinity. Plus, we all know about the Nazis, right? White supremacists, anti-Semites, the embodiment of the worst white thoughts to ever disgrace the planet. Their inclusion in the film was no mistake, and the fact that they're always the butt of the joke gives you a hint as to the filmmaker's thematic message. The Blues Brothers was groundbreaking in its cultural appreciation, and I think for those reasons, you can enjoy it guilt-free. I definitely did. I give it a solid 14 out of 15 lobsters. Okay. It's 3 in the morning. Where's John Landis? I need that cocaine. In today's climate, I look at this movie and wonder if society has regressed. I mean, this was made in 1980, and it has such respect for different cultures. I mean, nowadays, we gotta pull people by the ear to get them to change the name of a football team. What did you think of Blues Brothers? What was your favorite part? I know I missed like 4,000 other things about the making of this film, so feel free to educate me in the comments below, and while you're down there, give me a like and a subscribe, por favor. All the links I found for research on this video can be found in the description below, so check those out if you're interested. If you have a genre or movie that you'd like to recommend, let me know in the comment section, the Discord, or the movie list that can be found in the Discord. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully I'll see you next week. I'm a f***ing terrible dancer, Jesus Christ.